Are we all overreacting a little bit to the economic times and prices moving downward? We're going to talk about this here today. First, we've got some housekeeping notes. So hang in with me here. I've got a little bit of a to-do list I need to get through. So first off, I have resources to buy collections. This is fairly new. Actually, I've had it for a little while. I've done it, kind of as people have reached out to me, but I wanted to announce if you do have a collection or know somebody that does have a collection to sell, I've got two resources I'm very confident in that do a great job. So if you don't want to be lowballed by the chasing cardboard guys, just kidding, Mike. Reach out to me. I've got a couple of resources that might be able to help. We've set up a media partnership with the sportscardspecialist.com website. They get about 50,000 visitors a month currently, but I really like how these guys have structured their site. They've got just about daily content that's coming out, so daily hobby news type stuff that is in written form. If you enjoy articles and that sort of stuff, these guys do an excellent job, and they're going to embed some of my videos throughout their site as we go along. So definitely check out sportscardspecialist.com. Excited to link up with those guys and work with them. All right, we have a gift from the Hake case. If you're looking for some serious protection for cards, this is a new company that has come out with the Hake case. This sucker has all the bells and whistles on it. So definitely, if you're looking for a new case, check out the Hake case. Thank you very much, guys, for sending me this. It's pretty sweet. And then lastly, a thank you to today's video sponsor, Hake's Auctions. We've got the monstrous November auction coming up. Tons of variety of collectibles. It's going to be graded sports cards, it's action figures, it's comic books, it's all the stuff, a huge variety. Been around since 1967. I'm actually going to hold off on spending for the next 30 days so I can make a little bit of a splash for this Hake's Auctions coming up. They've got some really cool stuff that they're showing off on their IG of what is to come. So definitely check out Hake's Auctions, and then also on IG especially as well, as you'll see them kind of throwing up different things that are coming up in the November auction. All right, so I was texting back and forth with one of my hobby friends, Rob, Sports Card Specialist, and we were just kind of talking about state of the market stuff. I saw him on with Big Ken. They were doing a podcast episode where they had done a show recently, and it was kind of a mixed bag of feedback on that. But I reached out to him just saying like, hey, look, I know you know a lot of dealers, you do a lot of shows. What is what are people saying? What's going on the ground? And one thing that he had shared with me is it seems like a lot of the flipping that's being done, or at least kind of the big buys and sells, are in bulk. So it's people that are showing up and saying like, hey, I'll buy out the case. People with cash basically are coming in and buying at a discount, and they're able to kind of work off of those margins, which makes a lot of sense. It just feels more and more like the days of buying an individual card and moving that card. Man, I mean, of course, you can kind of get lucky on these sorts of things in a weekend, or kind of catch fire like when a certain player gets hot or whatever. Or you just happen to have the right collector in mind. You find something and sell it to another collector. I actually think that is probably where the real opportunity is. If you are a show flipper, it's more about just having a strong network of who's buying what, and really not necessarily maybe a dealer network, so dealers looking for things. But now I think there's more and more a focus on big time collector network. So if you know a big time Jordan collector and you happen to be at a show and you see something that's like, okay, I know this guy is looking for this, or, whatever, Mahomes or whatever the case may be, and you're able to kind of get a finder's fee for connecting people. I know this is not anything new, that people have been doing this for a long time, but it seems to me like there would be a lot of opportunity with less people maybe spending money to travel to card shows, or just kind of looking online for things to pop up. But this happened to me just the other day, where there's a Stranger Things card that popped up in a Facebook group, and he was referred to me like, hey, that's your Stranger Things guy. He collects Stranger Things. So it's all about just kind of connecting people. And if you can be a connector, then there's some opportunity there. On this topic too, I've been watching hobby content around this. Loot Box TV just recently put out an episode just talking about new direction of the channel, and just kind of some things that they're going to do differently. And I've met those guys before in the past, but hadn't really followed along all the different kind of ins and outs of their channel. And they've basically been putting up the money, a lot of times paying retail, where they're ripping these boxes on their channel. They have almost 100,000 subscribers. They've spent, and they said in this video, hundreds of thousands of dollars on products. So it hasn't been a cheap road to building out the channel and just their business in general. They were talking about how their local card shop has been struggling. Kind of one of them mainly focuses on TCG and pulling out of the sports card side. And so it has everyone kind of just rethinking things. There's a lot of, I think, consolidation, rethinking, how are we hobbying? a lot of bearish sentiment. And that's what I think. I think we've got to be at 5-year lows for sentiment. What I mean by that is just not having confidence in today's prices. And even Rob had said in some cases it feels like, you're you're trying to catch a falling knife, that expression. And for Rob, especially sports card therapist, he's a big time vintage card buyer. And if you're not buying high-end vintage cards, if you're buying, let's say, mid to low grades of a lot of this stuff, it's available. It's fairly widely available, regardless of what you're looking for, unless it's a 52 Topps mantle or something like that. It's fairly available, in that once you get to 6 and below, if it's a Hall of Fame, random Hall of Fame, 50s baseball card, it's available. It's out there. So it kind of just begs the question. It's kind of like, what's the rush? Same with modern cards. If it's a fairly available modern card, what's the rush? And that's why I think you see a lot of people, if they are going to make a move on a card, it's a 1 of 1, or it's a gold out of 10, or it's a low numbered something of a player that they want or a character that they want if it's non-sports. And then otherwise, the feeling, I guess, is just what's the rush? And then you have great episode on my channel here a couple of days ago with DPZ Dennis and Brent, Deep Value Investor. And Brent's kind of all about, hey, look, his overall mantra is just, at the end of the day, when we're looking long term, the money is eventually going to siphon up to the best, most rare cards, and a lot of the other stuff is going to be worthless. He puts it as worthless, but he's take that with a grain of salt. It's not as if like the 52 Topps mantle is going to be just it, and all the other mantle cards will be zero. But in a sense, though, he is making the kind of the statement that the money's going to flow up, into those top cards, and that's really it. I think I don't really grasp as far as that mode of thinking is that if you're talking about, yes, the big money and the high end, the Jeff Bezos individuals that can go out there and make those buys, sure, but what about everybody else that can't afford a PSA 10 Mickey Mantle card for 52 Topps? There's going to be people that just want to have a copy of it that'll buy the one. And so I guess to me, it just feels like the lower grades would follow the higher grade. And maybe that higher grade, there's a larger delta that happens over time between the 10 and then the 987. Maybe, I guess you could maybe make that case, but I still think, though, that if only 3 people can own a PSA 10 Mickey Mantle 52 Topps, and that's really it, or one person can own all 3 of them, I guess, if they happen to catch all of them up for sale, but it's extremely limited, and then you have all these mantle collectors. And that's just, we're using that as kind of the case study here, the big picture one, but then you take a look at all the other players, and it's really no different. It's all about collector base, and people are going to get in at different price points and try to kind of move up, consolidate, and that sort of thing. But it still remains, though, that if you only have a few individuals that can own the top tier stuff, yes, maybe that stuff is, widely more expensive than the rest of it. But the other stuff, to me, just my opinion, has to follow for that same card. I think each individual card has its own market. But if we're just using 52 Topps mantle, or 86 Fleer Michael Jordan PSA 10. It's a widely available card, that 86 Fleer Jordan, but if the 10 goes up, if the 10 is worth $1 million in 20 years, I don't think the 9 is at $8,000 and the 8 is at $4,000. I just don't see how that gap happens like that. It would seem to me that it would follow it up. But again, kind of going back to Brent and Dennis, their conversation, where I think it makes a lot of sense in a lot of cases, it still feels to me like we're just so heavy in the bear market that it's just bear market sentiment. It's kind of like when you've got the bull run and everything is running up, then it's the euphoria. And as human beings, it's all so predictable. We always do the same thing. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about sports cards or the stock market or real estate or whatever it is. We're always chasing, oh man, it's red hot, and we're always jumping to get in at some level. And so, but right now, look, we're in a longer period of time in this bear market for cards than we were during the boom in the first place. We are now in over 2.5 years removed from prices being at all-time highs. April of 2020 is when card prices started their descent downward. April of 2021. So that is 2.5 years ago. The actual bull run, the huge, insanity Mount Everest, run was 18 months. It started in September, October timeframe of 2019. It's when Luka, Mahomes, and actually Lamar Jackson, that was his MVP year. Lamar Jackson stuff shot way up with Mahomes. So it was Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Luka really led the way for modern cards, and that trickled down to all the other kind of the prospects and the different spec guys making plays on different NBA players and that sort of thing. But those three in the modern market went absolutely bananas. It started in September, October of 2019, and then it had took us all the way to the pandemic in March, and then they kind of fluttered a little bit in March when there was some uncertainty, and then it was like stimulus money coming, and then it was like April of 2020 to April of 2021. We're talking about 18 months of the euphoria. And then you could say like, yeah, through the end of 2021, stuff was still staying pretty high, but it was slowly kind of moving downward for a lot of cards. And then now we're 2.5 years removed from that, if you can believe it. So, I mean, we've really been in kind of a 2-year plus bear market for cards and a lot of collectibles. And so while I think that fear can be a great motivator, it can be a great defense mechanism. It catches you, to where you can be logical. You're a little bit more safe with your money. That's kind of where we are. There's a lot of uncertainty with the economy, no doubt about that whatsoever. People are being a little bit more careful, even if, the jobs reports sound great and consumer confidence is still awesome. I mean, I just look around, I talk to my friends and everything. I just don't see that. So I don't know what the news media, I guess they know way more than the rest of us, but it does not feel like a busy, bustling economy at all to me. And I do think that, look, I think we've got my guess, I can't see the future, another 6+ months of this sort of feels, and 6 to 12 months probably. I think, 6 months at a minimum, 12 months, and then eventually we get to a stage where the Fed starts to really kind of ease off. I think that they kind of have to at some point. We also have an election year in the U.S., which magically might have something to do with that. We will see. I'd be surprised if there's not any sort of added pressure with the election. I know people say, oh, the Federal Reserve is independent. They don't pay attention to any of that stuff. Right. Okay, sure. But what's been exciting for me is, especially on auction, man, I've caught different cards that I'm looking for. Example, I bought cards recently where, the auction ended at $65, and, the other copy I see on eBay is $399 or best offer, or, one that sells at $110. The other copies are at like $400 or best offer, $700 or best offer. There's just a lot of stuff on auction, especially, that is just being run at auction. And I do think, and again, like, who knows, maybe it still continues to go down, but I'm getting cards that haven't been at this price point for years. And so for the stuff that I'm looking for in particular, and I know I'm not the only one, I know there's people out there that are catching auctions at great prices. And I think that's the whole thing. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago on Off Centered. Back then during kind of the euphoria, you'd hear people say like, oh, it's just, guys, just buy low and sell high. Like, it's just that easy. Just buy low and sell high. This is going back to 2021, when everyone was talking about how they're making money on cards, etc. And it was always like, this is such an easy thing, because that was actually the easiest time to flip cards in the history of flipping cards was during that time. So, but it's just so funny to me. What type of advice can you give out? Oh, it's just, okay, so you buy low and then you sell higher than that. Wow. Unbelievable. But now I guess my point here is we are seeing auctions sell really low. So the old idea of buying low, it's happening out there. It's just, are we looking forward to it? And it might not necessarily be on the $2,000 card or the $5,000 card. I see a lot of this stuff where it's like, I made a play at $3,700. That's a hell of a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So, I mean, unless it's a card that was, $30,000 during the high, and now it's $3,700, then maybe you're taking a look at it. But for me, those are very specific cards. There's a lot of people out there that are just buying, I bought in at $2,000 because, at the height it was $2,800. Like, that's not quite enough of a dip for me. But again, it's case by case. Anyway, I think this is kind of interesting. Are we missing an opportunity? Are we missing opportunities because, just like with all of these sorts of, falls in prices and, weak economies and all this stuff, are we missing opportunities? And the answer is probably yes in certain circumstances. And then prices will go up eventually, and then it'll be like, what? And then it's like we're buying in at a higher rate. The only time anyone ever really makes money, you can use Warren Buffett as an example. Warren Buffett always gets, pegged as like the greatest stock trader of all time and this and that. He's made huge money on Coca-Cola, basically in the 80s during like Black Monday, where it sunk to, some stupid like $3 a share. And he put like $1 billion in 1987 or 1988 into Coca-Cola stock. And he's done extremely well there. Bank of America during the 2008-2009 crisis, I think he put billions of dollars, $3 or $4 or $5 billion into just Bank of America because it sunk down so low. And he's done very well there. He just picks out like kind of like basic, obvious opportunities and then puts all of his chips in and makes a truckload of money. Not all of his chips, a lot of his chips in, makes a truckload of money, moves out of positions when he needs to, and now he owns, I think 51% of Berkshire Hathaway stock is Apple, which is so ironic because he was never a technology buyer, and then a few years ago he kind of changed his mind on Apple. I think Apple showed him enough at that point where it was like, okay, this company's going to dominate. Yeah, this is it. So it's just a funny world out there, and I'm not saying that we've got any sort of Apple opportunities in sports cards, but when it gets really, really, really bearish, then it's probably not a bad buying time. Probably not. Certainly better than 2021. All right, guys, that's all I've got today. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.